buenas tardes. Otra vez seguimos con el video número 5 de cómo aprender a programar en 6 meses. Estamos aprendiendo Python en YouTube. Estábamos en el video anterior, estábamos viendo lo que eran los diccionarios, que son una funcionalidad de Python que nos permite agregar información con una llave valor. Es un tipo, es una data structure, en español, una estructura de datos para guardar datos clave valor y tiene diferentes métodos. El que vemos fue el punto get, que nos ayuda a obtener mm, eh, una llave de nuestro diccionario. Si está, mostrarla, y si no está, modificarla, agregarle un valor para expresarlo. Estábamos viendo el reto de que un usuario escriba su número de teléfono y cambiarlo a letras. Entonces, pues vamos a intentar hacerlo nuevamente. Esta vez va a ser entre ustedes y yo. No voy a poner el video inmediatamente porque realmente pues la idea es lograr hacerlo entre ustedes y yo. Entonces, pónganle cuidado. Voy a editar aquí una cosita rápidamente. Control. Editar. Listo. Entonces, primero vamos a tener el input del número del usuario. Recordemos que siempre toca en minúsculas, número, usuario, igual a un input, que es para pedirle al usuario que nos ingrese una información. Enter your phone number. Listo. Entonces, aquí tenemos el número del usuario, ¿cierto? Que lo va a ingresar, Puede ser números, letras, no importa, va a ser un string. Después va a tener lo que se llama va a tener lo que se llama, ok, listo. Vamos a tener nuestro diccionario de números, entonces lo llamamos diccionario números, lo vamos a llamar números, numbers en inglés, porque todo el código lo estamos haciendo en inglés. Listo. Entonces vamos a llamarlo con el primer llave 1. Después le vamos a agregar recuerde que aquí nos por igual si no funciona con dos puntos, y le vamos a agregar el 1. Seguimos con el siguiente clave 2, pero aquí tenemos un problema porque el cliente lo que va a hacer es vamos a llamarlo por la clave. Entonces tiene que ir primero lo que el cliente va a ingresar, que pues esperamos que sean números. Entonces va a ser el 1, y ahí se lo vamos a cambiar y lo que le vamos a cambiar es esto. Listo. Entonces agrega el 2, que es la clave, después el valor, que vendría siendo 2. Listo. Ya. Recuerda que el usuario siempre nos vamos a modificar es la clave, no el valor, con el punto get, que es lo que nos va a permitir. Entonces, 3, otra vez el valor, 4, ahora el valor, la otra vez es el valor, otra vez la clave, que vendría siendo 5, después vendría siendo 5, después vendría siendo 6, que vendría siendo 6, 7, que vendría siendo 7, 7, el 8, que es la clave, traes el valor 8, después va el 9, 9, y ya, listo. Que solo hay 9 números para llamar. En números reales, naturales, como los quieran llamar. Listo. Entonces, ahora necesitamos recorrer cada uno de los números del cliente. Entonces lo vamos a llamar item in número usuario, ¿cierto? Lo vamos a recorrer y en cada item vamos a primero a crear una variable que se va a llamar output cliente, número en letras, listo. Entonces eso se lo vamos a asignar y le vamos a decir que ¿qué es lo que le vamos a asignar? Entonces a usuario, entonces como está recorriendo, entonces dictionary.get, necesitamos obtener la clave, no el valor, la clave, que vendría siendo item, que es lo que estamos obteniendo, entonces el 1, ¿cierto? En llegado caso que no lo encuentre, entonces le vamos a asignar como, ¿qué le vamos a asignar? Hashtag, listo. Pero a eso le vamos a agregar unos espacios, le vamos a concatenar unos espacios, listo. Después vamos a imprimir el output número de letras, ¿cierto? Y ya ahí está nuestro programa desarrollado, listo. Entonces vamos a correrlo rápidamente. Entonces aquí en la terminal, vamos a limpiar la consola, vamos a correrlo, enter your number, entonces tenemos este número, listo. Entonces él nos pone for, algo está mal. Listo, él nos devolvió el 4 que número es, fue el último, entonces solo nos está volviendo el último porque nos faltó agregárselo. El igual siempre va después, entonces más igual, o sea, cada vez que itere lo tiene que agregar. Vamos a corroborarlo nuevamente, entonces enter tu número, listo. Entonces nos dice que está is not defined, entonces nos dice que no está definido. Ahora nos dice que no está definido, es porque no lo habíamos definido aquí afuera con una caja vacía. Entonces, primero hay que definirlo para poderle agregar algo. Entonces, ya aprendemos a solucionar errores que nos bota la consola y volvemos. Entonces, el número, le damos un número, entonces 549846165. Es que no me gusta aquí que listo. 6, 7, 8, 9. Listo. Entonces, ahora le vamos a botar un número. Va a ser este, pero con valores extra. Entonces, 8456, numeral, no cuenta. Listo. Perfecto. Entonces, este sí lo voy a agregar como un proyecto, porque realmente es un proyecto. Entonces, lo vamos a agregar aquí en Python Projects, abcdfg project. Dictionary project. Punto 67 punto py. Y aquí que tocaría cambiarlo que es F6, listo. Perfecto, ahí nos quedó. Entonces ya seguimos con la otra parte del proyecto. Espero que ahí se pueda ver. Listones. Seguimos.
That's all you have to do. Now finally, let's print this output, run our program. So I'm going to type 1, 3, 4, 5. Let's see what we get. We get 1, 3, 4 with an exclamation mark.
emoji converter. Aquí lo vamos a agregar. Add. Entonces vamos a verificar que se haya subido al repositorio. Projects. Dictionary project. Emoji converter. Ahora nos vamos por emoji converter. Entonces nos iríamos por emoji converter. Listo. Entonces aquí este ya está. Practice en 0 y nos iríamos por emoji converter.
In this tutorial, I'm going to show you something really cool that you can do with dictionaries. So here we have this program. You can type a message like good morning, followed by a smiley face. When we press enter, we get this beautiful smiley face. Or we can type I am sad with a sad smiley face, and it gets translated to this beautiful emoji. So this is another application of using dictionaries. We have a dictionary that maps these characters into smiley faces. So let's go ahead and build this program together. We start by calling the input function. Here we pass a greater than symbol as an indicator for the user to type a message. We get that message, store it here. As you know, that is a string. Now we need to split the string by a space. So if the user types good morning with a smiley face, we want to break this down into 3 words: good, morning, and smiley face. To do that, we can call the split method. So we call message.split and pass a string with 1 space as the separator. What this method does is basically it goes through the string, and anywhere it finds this character, in this case a space, it uses that as a boundary to separate this string into multiple words. And then it will return a list. Let me show you. So let's store that here, words, and then print it on the terminal. Let's go ahead and run our program. So if we type good morning sunshine, enter, we get a list with 3 items. Good.
This method help us this method help us to divide the same every time finds a space. Okay. Vamos a correrlo. Register Andrés David. Okay.
Let's go ahead and run our program. So if we type good morning sunshine, enter, we get a list with 3 items. Each item is a string. Okay. Now, back to our program, we need to define a dictionary for mapping special characters like these 2 into a smiley face. So we can call that emojis, set it to curly braces. Here we add a key value pair, a smiley face, and we map that to a string. In the string, we want to add an emoji. If you're on a Mac keyboard, you can press Control, Command, and Space, and this should bring up this emoji box. If you're on Windows, honestly, I really don't know how you can do this, but there must be applications that do this for you. So let's go ahead and pick this happy smiley face. Good.
Happy.
Now let's add another key value pair for sad face. We map this to this face here. Good. So we have a list of words. Now we need to look through this list, get each word, and potentially map it to an emoji. So we can write a for loop for words in words. Now we want to go to our dictionary and see if you have an item with this word as the key. If you have an item with that key, then we'll get its value. Otherwise, we want to use the same word. So if the user types good morning, we don't want to translate those words. We just want to return those. So that is the case where we use the get method to supply a default value. So we want to get an item with the key word. And if we don't have an item with that key, we simply use that word as the default value. Now, similar to the exercise that we did in the last tutorial, we need an output variable. So let's define that here, output, set it to an empty string. Now back to line 9, we get the return value of the get method and add it to our output variable. So output plus equals whatever we get from the get method. And finally, we need to append a space at the end. That's it, we're done. So let's print the output and run our program. I'm gonna type good morning, sunshine, with a smiley face. We get that, beautiful. Let's try a sad face as well. I am sad, too bad. Beautiful. So as you can see, dictionaries have a lot of use cases in real applications.
Word dictionaries. Vamos a acá, porque le puse otro nombre, aquí le puse otro nombre. Practice. Hello, everybody. Forward and words. Espera. El cliente va a escribir algo. Y lo va a guardar. Entonces, es diccionario. Entonces, es diccionario. Word. Entonces, acá por ahora. Hello. Entonces, out. Porque otra vez corre. Otra vez limpiamos. Hello, good sunshine. Claro, valor. Si ingresa otra cosa, pues no. Entonces lo que hace es separarlos. Entonces, dividir las palabras. Después tenemos nuestro string. Entonces vamos a comprobar. El primero es hello. Hello es un. Está dentro del diccionario, no. Entonces agréguelo. Hello, listo. Agréguelo al output, listo. Después va good. 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 Está en el diccionario, no. Entonces agregue diccionario. Good. Ya pongo un espacio y después va la carita feliz. Entonces agrega hello, good y carita feliz. ¿Está en el diccionario? Sí. Entonces agréguese. Agréguele el emoji en vez de en este. Function. Entonces nos vamos con un git. Listo. Vamos a ver qué hago acá. Adding converter dictionary. ¿Será muy largo? Learning an animal loop. Dictionary project. Este es el commit. Listo.
Here's a solution from the last tutorial where we created an emoji converter. Now, so far we've been writing all our code right here in app.py, but as our programs grow, we need a better way to organize our code. We need to break up our code into smaller, more manageable, and more maintainable
Functions are a block code to call them when we need and to use it easy than get the block code out of a function. Yes, functions are blocks of reusable code that you can call whenever you need it. They help organize code about repetition and make programs easy to read and maintain. Okay.
chunks, which we call functions. So a function is a container for a few lines of code that perform a specific task. For example, you have learned about a few of the built-in functions in Python like print and input. Each of these functions have a purpose. They know how to perform a specific task. So when building large, complex programs, we should break up our code into smaller, reusable chunks, which we call functions, to better organize our code. And that's what I'm going to show you in this tutorial. So let's write a simple program for printing a greeting message. So we're going to do a print, hi there, and let's add another message. Well, come aboard. So here we have a simple program with only 2 lines of code. Now let's say these 2 lines, potentially we're going to need them in other programs. So we can put them in a function that we can reuse. Let me show you how to do that. So we start typing out def, that is a reserved keyword in Python, and it's short for define. When Python interpreter sees this, it knows that we're defining a function. Next, we need to give our function a name. Let's say greet underline user. So all the best practices you learned about naming your variables also apply here, which means you should name your functions with lowercase characters. If there are multiple words, you need to separate them using an underscore. And you should always, 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 always use meaningful and descriptive names for your functions. So here we're defining a function called greetUser. After that, we need to add parentheses followed by a colon. Now, you know that whenever we add a colon at the end of a line, we're telling Python that we're defining a block of code. So when we press enter, the next line is indented. Now, any code that we write here will belong to this function. So I'm going to move these two lines, these two print statements, inside of our function. We can simply press tab to indent them. Beautiful. Also, let's remove this extra line break. That is better. So these two lines now are part of our greetUser function. So whenever we call this function, these two lines will be executed. Okay. Now let's remove indentation. So here we are outside of our function. Let's do a print statement and print start. After that, let's call our function. So greetUser. And finally, let's do another print statement and print finish.
Hello there, welcome aboard.
Now we have this little warning here, this underline. If you hover your mouse over this line, this tooltip is telling you that we should add 2 blank lines after function definition. This is coming from PEP 8, which is a document that defines the best practices for formatting our code. We'll look at that in the future.
¿Cómo se llama?
The document that defines
PipH. What is PipH? PipH. Python Engagement Protocol is the official style guide for Python code. For Python code, it provides conventions and recommendations for that include spaces. Okay. Arguments. Okay, it's the official style guide for Python code. It provides conventional recommendations for writing clean, readable, and consistent Python code by following pip should. ¿Y dónde lo encuentro? Pip ouch. Public shuffle, code layout indentation. No, listo. Cada vez que conozcamos algo nuevo, toca agregarlo de una vez a algún lugar donde uno lo pueda encontrar fácilmente. Que ese es el problema después, que uno no encuentra lo que necesita.
the best practices for formatting our code. We'll look at that in the future. So for now, to make PyCharm happy, let's add an extra line break after this function. So whenever we define a function, we need to add 2 line breaks after. Okay? So now let's run our program and see what happens. All right, so we get 4 messages on the terminal. First, we get the start message. Then we get the messages coming from our greet function. So hi there and welcome aboard. And finally, all right, so we get, now let's run our program and see what happens. All right, so we get 4 messages on the terminal. First, we get the start message. Then we get the messages coming from our greet function. So hi there and welcome aboard. And finally, we see the finish message. So let me explain the flow of our program. When Python runs this code, it doesn't actually print these 2 messages on the terminal because these lines of code are inside of this function. So they will only get executed if we call this function. If we don't call this function, these lines will not get executed, okay? So the execution of our program actually starts here. The first message that we see on the terminal is the start message. After that, Python sees that we're calling the greet function, so it will jump over here and then execute these 2 lines. Then it will jump outside of this function and continue the normal execution of our program, so it will print the finished message on the terminal. So this is how functions work. Also note that the order of this code matters. So here we're calling the greet function after we have defined it. If you try to call it before you define it, you will see an error. For example, if we call the greet user function right here, see, we immediately get this red underline, which says unresolved reference greet user.
I need to find the best way to learn math and science. It's Brilliant.org.
Whoa.
Brilliant has thousands of interactive lessons in math, science, and computer science. You'll solve fun problems and learn from clear and intuitive explanations. Brilliant gets you hands-on to help you learn by doing, because studies show that interactive learning is 6 times more effective than watching lecture videos. With over 10 million users around the world, Brilliant is the best place to learn interactively. Start your 30-day free trial at Brilliant.org.
Which basically means,
Ok, entonces vamos a llegar aquí un comentario. There is another in Python where how it calls every function, every element of document, and the functions go after variables yeah.
Python doesn't know what is this create user. It's not defined anywhere. So we always define our functions first and then call them.
You have to function first before to call it. Listo.
Here's the function we created in the last tutorial. Now I got a question for you. What is the difference between calling this function and the print function of Python?
Parameters.
The difference is that the print function takes some information, in this case, the message that we want to print, but our greet function doesn't take any information. Wouldn't that be nicer if you could pass the name of the user here, and then instead of saying
the parameters from a function are characteristics that we can pass to our function Yes, exactly. Parameters in a function are like placeholders or characteristics that function helps it call. They allow you to pass data into the function to be used with its vary. Okay.
hi there, you could print the name of the user. So in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to pass information to your functions. And that is pretty easy. So back to the definition of our greet user function. Inside of this parenthesis, we can add parameters. These parameters are placeholders for receiving information. For example, we can add a name parameter, and with this, we can pass the name of the user when calling this function. So let's pass John here. Now, when we call this function and pass this value, this name parameter will be set to John. So it will act like a local variable that we define in
Etc. Está corre que
side of
corre.
this function. Just imagine we didn't have this parameter, and instead we had a variable like name that was set to John. Now here, we could simply print the name of this user. So we could use a formatted string and print the value of the name variable, right? Now, we don't really have this local variable defined.
Hello?
Hi, this call is regarding an order placed under your name. To get more information or to cancel this order.
In this function, we have a parameter. It's exactly the same thing. So with these parameters, we can receive information in our functions. Now let's go ahead and run this program. So take a look. We get, hi John, welcome aboard. We can take this to the next level. Now we can call this function one more time. So greet user, and this time supply a different name. Let's say Mary. So we are reusing our greet function and passing it a different value. Imagine if we didn't have this function, we would have to repeat this line twice. Once for hi John and another time for hi Mary. So this is the benefit of defining functions. We can take a few lines of code that have a specific purpose and put them inside of a function. So now let's run our program one more time. There you go. So we get hi John, welcome aboard. Then we get hi Mary, welcome aboard. Now note that when a function has a parameter, we are obligated to pass a value for that parameter. So if we remove John from here and run our program, we get this type error, greet user missing one required positional argument. Argument in programming is the value that we supply to a function. So back to this example, Mary in this case is an argument that we pass to the name parameter. A lot of programmers don't know the difference between parameters and arguments and think they are the same, but they are not. Parameters are the holes or placeholders that we define in our function for receiving information. Arguments are the actual pieces of information that we supply to these functions, okay? So let's bring back
Argument and parameter. Parameters, placeholder, holder that we have to add something to the function, and arguments are the arguments are the information that we already put in our placeholder. Oiga, es súper importante eso, ¿no? Yo siempre pensaba que parámetros y argumentos eran lo mismo, pero no. Parameters in a function, they specify kind of information that needs to work. They specify what kind of information the function needs to work. You define them when you create the function, ¿ok? O sea, entonces los parámetros los definimos cuando creamos la función, pero son espacios vacíos, solo las definimos. Y los argumentos son el valor actual de la información que nosotros pasamos cuando lo llamamos. Okay. Entonces ahí la definimos, name and age son parámetros, pero ya cuando llamamos la función greet, Alice, 30 ya son argumentos. Function call with arguments. Ok, yo pensé que eran lo mismo, pero no, son diferentes.
apply to these functions, okay? So let's bring back this John string, okay? Now we can also define multiple parameters. For example, let's rename this parameter to first name. As I told you before, you can right click here, go to refactor, and then rename, or preferably you can use a shortcut. So the shortcut for this on Mac is Shift and F6. And this brings up the rename dialog box. Here we can change this to first underline name. Now we can add a second parameter, so comma, followed by last underline name. So back to our formatted string, let's also print the last name. Beautiful. So here when calling these functions, then we can supply another argument. So John Smith, and let's delete this line. We don't really need it anymore. Run our program. Take a look. Hi, John Smith.
Ok, listo. Entonces vamos a crear la función. Toca agregar el dev, greeting. Vamos a poner el mismo nombre, greeting. Bueno, el pomodoro ha terminado. Entonces en esa clase aprendimos funciones. Terminamos de ver lo que era el diccionario. Realmente esta clase se fue muy larga. Realmente la idea es hacer pomodoros de 25 minutos. Aquí se me olvidó activar el pomodoro. Aprendimos funciones, argumentos, son diferentes que los parámetros. Aprendimos cómo manejar los diccionarios con clave de valor, el convertidor de emojis, usando diccionarios, utilizando el bucle for. Ya hemos aprendido diferentes conceptos. La idea es profundizarlos e interiorizarlos, es lo más importante. Entonces, muchas gracias nuevamente por el stream. Los espero en el otro. Muchas gracias.